I came home after 9 months in the hospital expecting dust and silence. Instead, I found strangers drinking wine on my couch, calling my house their Airbnb. My cousin had stolen my life and turned it into a lakeside business. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't dead yet. I've always liked being alone, not in the sad, brooding kind of way, just in the deeply satisfying silence of the lake kind of way. My place was never meant to be flashy, just a modest one-story cabin tucked between tall pines and the mirror-still water of a lake. Nobody outside the county could pronounce right. I'd put decades of work into that house. Sanding the floors myself, rebuilding the deck, hand-staining every wooden beam. It wasn't big, but it was mine, and every board knew my name. I hadn't planned on disappearing for almost 9 months. Life had other ideas. One heart attack, a collapsed lung, and a string of medical errors later, I found myself pinned to a hospital bed with machines whispering in my ear and nurses who looked 12 years old. After the initial ICU chaos, I got transferred to a rehab center that specialized in long-term convalescence, which is medical code for "you're gonna be here a while, bud." My phone was lost somewhere between ambulance rides and no one thought to bring me another. I wasn't exactly high priority and I didn't have a spouse or kids to come check in. I had a cousin, Karen, but we hadn't spoken since she screamed at me at my dad's funeral for not wearing a tie. So I laid there, watched the snow melt and spring crawl in through the window of that sterile room. My neighbors probably thought I'd died. Hell, I wasn't sure I hadn't. Somewhere around month 4, I stopped thinking about the house altogether. It was too painful. Like thinking about a dog you left behind during an evacuation. It was early August when they finally released me. My legs were shaky, my hands a little too thin, but I was alive and most importantly lucid. I didn't waste a second. The moment the discharge nurse finished the paperwork, I called a cab and paid through the nose for the 2-hour ride back to my property. The driver was a chatty kid who thought I was coming home from a long vacation. I didn't correct him. Didn't feel like explaining how close I'd been to checking out entirely. When we turned onto the gravel road that led to my cabin, something felt off immediately. There were tire tracks I didn't recognize, newer ones. Multiple cars had been using that road recently, and often. The trees were still there, the curve was still sharp, but as we rolled closer, my chest tightened. My cabin wasn't empty. There were 2 SUVs parked in the driveway. Both newer models, shiny, black, expensive. One had out-of-state plates. On the porch was a string of solar-powered lights that I'd never put up, and the welcome mat was some farmhouse-style monstrosity that read, "Namaste at the lake." My gut turned cold. I told the cabbie to wait and stepped out, walking slow, unsteady but burning inside. I opened the screen door and pushed through, and nearly had a heart attack all over again. A couple, maybe late 20s, sat on my couch drinking white wine and watching Property Brothers on my TV. The man had his bare feet up on the table I built with my own damn hands. The woman screamed when she saw me. "What the hell?" she shouted, backing into the armrest. "Excuse me," I said coldly, "but who the hell are you and why are you in my house?" The guy stood up fast, holding his hands out like I was about to mug them. Whoa, dude, this isn't cool. You can't just barge into someone's Airbnb rental." I froze. "Airbnb?" I blinked. "This isn't a rental. This is my goddamn house." The guy pulled out his phone, showed me the listing. Lakefront Serenity Escape, managed by Lake Life Properties, LLC. Photos of my living room, my bedroom, even the damn canoe with my name carved into the side. "You're telling me you're Joe Riley?" the woman asked, her voice cracking. "Damn right I am." They called the police. By the time the sheriff's deputy rolled up, I was sitting on the porch with my face in my hands, trying not to explode. The guests were inside, probably texting frantic messages to their friends. The deputy was young, fresh out of training probably, and clearly unsure what the hell to do with a situation like this. He asked for ID. I gave him my license, pulled out a copy of the deed I kept in my suitcase like a talisman, and tried to explain the unexplainable. The couple confirmed they'd booked the place for 2 weeks and paid in full. The reservation had been confirmed by someone named Karen B. My stomach dropped. The deputy made a few calls. He wasn't sure what authority he had to kick anyone out without a court order. "Looks like you'll have to resolve this through civil court," he told me, sheepish. "I can't stay in my own house?" I asked, voice shaking. "Legally? Not until you get this cleared up. You'll probably want to talk to a lawyer." He was polite, apologetic even, but not helpful. I spent that night in a motel off the highway. Dingy curtains, AC unit that rattled like a washing machine full of bricks. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of a TV next door blaring some game show. It wasn't just the house that had been taken from me. It was my name, my history, my place in the world. Someone had slipped in while I was unconscious and claimed it all like a vulture. I turned on my phone, a new one I'd bought that day, and opened Facebook. A quick search for Lake Life Properties LLC brought up a business page run by none other than Karen B. My cousin. My blood. She had stolen my home out from under me, and I wasn't about to let her keep it. I barely slept that night in the motel. The sheets smelled like someone else's sweat, and the air conditioner had 2 settings, hurricane and dead. Around 3 in the morning, I sat up, flipped on the light, and started making a list. I've always been the kind of man who writes things down when everything starts spinning. It's how I stayed sane during my divorce. This time, though, the list wasn't about feelings. It was war prep. Item 1, confirm ownership status. Item 2, find out exactly what the hell Karen did. Item 3, take my damn house back. By morning, I'd had 3 cups of gas station coffee and exactly 0 answers. So I did what any pissed-off, half-recovered man would do. I drove straight to the county clerk's office with a copy of my deed and my ID. I explained calmly at first that someone had been renting out my home while I was stuck in medical purgatory. The clerk, a pale, exhausted-looking woman with hair the color of printer paper, squinted at the screen, then frowned. "Well," she said slowly, "it looks like someone filed a temporary management request on this property about 6 months ago. Karen Bishop. Says here she submitted paperwork stating you were medically incapacitated, and as your next of kin, she assumed stewardship." Stewardship? I nearly dropped my coffee. She's not a steward, she's a goddamn parasite. She had a signed affidavit from a facility, Fair Lake Recovery Center, that verified your ongoing medical confinement. With no contesting party and no response from you. The system approved it. I stared at her dumbfounded. So anyone can just start managing my property if I'm unconscious long enough? She winced. Technically, it's a legal gray zone. It wasn't a full guardianship, more like temporary custodial oversight, designed for people in comas or hospice. I wasn't in a coma, I snapped. I had a heart attack, not brain death. The clerk apologized and printed the file for me. There it was in black and white. Karen Bishop, cousin and legal contact, filed under emergency custodial authority. She had listed her contact email as lakelifepropertiesllc@gmail.com. That email would come back to haunt her. I left the office clutching the papers like evidence from a crime scene and drove to the only place that still felt familiar. The gas station across from the lake. The guy behind the counter, Travis, recognized me right away. "Holy crap, Joe. Man, we thought you'd... well, you know." "Yeah," I said. "Everyone seems to think that lately." Travis leaned over the counter, lowering his voice. Hey, some folks been staying at your place. Big cars, nice-looking women, not locals. Been going on for a while. How long is a while? He scratched his head. I started seeing cars around December, maybe earlier. One of them told me it was a lakefront wellness rental. Guess you got into the hospitality business? My fists clenched on instinct. I didn't rent it out. Karen did, without my permission. Travis whistled low. Damn, you want a Red Bull on the house? Make it a double-shot espresso, I've got work to do. I drove by the house that afternoon, parked across the street behind a thicket of pine. There were 3 vehicles in the driveway now, a red Jeep, a silver BMW, and what looked like a landscaping van. The lawn, which I used to trim with a push mower and stubborn pride, had been neatly manicured and lined with solar lights. There were potted plants I never bought, a wind chime that sounded like a dying whale, and a massive patio umbrella out back that looked like something out of a high-end catalog. But it wasn't just the decor. I looked through the side window and felt my throat tighten. Gone was my father's old rocking chair. Gone was the bookshelf I'd built in my 20s. The walls had been painted beige, generic and cold, and hanging in the hallway was a giant canvas print that read, "Lake life is the best life." The kitchen had been redone, new backsplash, cheap modern fixtures. My mother's cast iron pans were nowhere to be seen. She hadn't just used the house, she'd erased me from it. I walked around the property's edge, careful not to step on the lawn. A security camera blinked at me from above the front door. I almost laughed. Karen had installed surveillance on a house she didn't even own. Just before I turned to leave, I heard voices from the backyard. 2 women sipping wine on my dock. One of them waved casually in my direction like I was the help. The other said something about the property manager being a boss bitch. That was it. I drove straight to a lawyer's office in town. His name was Alan, gray-haired, fast-talking, and perpetually irritated, which made him perfect. "I'm not even gonna ask why you waited 9 months," he said after I explained everything. "You've got a mountain of evidence already. Deed ID witness and a fake property management LLC set up by your dear cousin. This is gonna be fun." I smiled for the first time in days. "I want her stopped." "Oh, she's not just getting stopped," he said, cracking his knuckles. "She's getting legally disemboweled." Alan drafted a cease and desist letter that same day. By evening, it was hand-delivered to Karen's listed mailing address, a UPS mailbox in town, because of course it was. He also sent a formal complaint to Airbnb claiming fraudulent activity on a stolen property. That night, I checked the Airbnb listing again. It was still live, available, 5 stars, 58 glowing reviews. But one stood out. Karen is a fantastic host, super responsive, and she gave us a tour of the house herself, said it's been in her family for years. I took a screenshot and smiled grimly. Let's see how those 5 stars hold up in court. You learn a lot about people when you start poking around in the mess they thought they'd cleaned up. Karen, for all her smug confidence, had the digital hygiene of a raccoon in a filing cabinet. It took me less than an hour to trace Lake Life Properties LLC's email to a Wix-built business site featuring stock photos of Adirondack chairs and wine glasses on docks. There was even a cheesy slogan, luxury, local, lakeside. The booking form wasn't even connected to Airbnb anymore. It routed straight to a Gmail inbox. She'd been taking cash rentals under the table. No taxes, no oversight, no paper trail, or so she thought. I clicked Book Now under a fake name and requested a stay for 1 week, offering to pay in cash. Within the hour, she responded, "Hi, Matt. I'd be happy to host you at Lakefront Serenity. We usually prefer digital payment, but for special guests, I can waive that." Let's arrange a time to meet at the property this weekend. I'll give you a quick tour before handing over the keys. There it was, proof she was personally managing the handoffs. I leaned back in my chair, grinned, and called my old friend Frank, a retired realtor with the charm of a poker shark and zero patience for bullshit. "You want me to play dumb and bait her?" he asked, clearly enjoying the prospect. "Exactly. Be an out-of-state investor looking for short-term rentals. Flash some cash, drop some flattery, and let her talk herself into a corner. I'll be watching from a distance and recording everything." Frank agreed. We set the sting for Saturday. In the meantime, I turned my attention to the missing pieces inside the house, the furniture, the keepsakes. I had a photographic memory of that cabin. I built the place like a scrapbook, every piece with its own story. Now the heart of it was gone. On a hunch, I started searching eBay and Facebook Marketplace for vintage lake decor, filtering by location. It took 15 minutes. There it was, my father's 1940s leather armchair listed as vintage lodge recliner minor wear. Seller K. Bishop Designs. Then, my mother's porcelain baking dish set, antique bakeware collection, estate sale. And finally, the one that broke me, a photo of my grandfather's tackle box with his name still burned into the lid, W. Riley. The realization hit like a slap to the chest. She wasn't just renting my home. She was selling it, piece by piece, to strangers online. My family's history was being strip-mined for profit. I messaged one of the buyers using a burner account and got a reply. The man had driven in from Massachusetts to pick up the armchair personally. She told me it came from an old lakefront estate she inherited. Said the house was getting demoed soon, so she was liquidating. I felt something shift in me. Not just anger, betrayal, violation, something primal. My home wasn't just being used. It was being rewritten. By Thursday, Alan had filed a formal notice of ownership fraud with the county and sent an IRS tip report linking Karen's cash rental scheme with undeclared business income. We had bank records, screenshots, and now, thanks to Facebook, a trail of property sales dating back months. She hadn't just monetized the house. She'd turned it into a damn side hustle. Saturday came, and I watched from across the lake through binoculars as Frank pulled into the driveway in his gleaming rental Cadillac. He wore a gold chain and a Hawaiian shirt so loud it scared birds from the trees. I'd asked for convincing. He gave me cartoonish. Karen came out to meet him, all smiles and charm, clipboard in hand. I had an audio feed running through a mic on Frank's collar. "Great to meet you, Mr. Nolan," she said, her voice all syrup. "This property is very dear to me. Been in my family for decades." Frank played dumb. "Oh, yeah? Looks like you've put some work into it." Karen giggled. "I've redecorated a bit, of course, had to modernize. My cousin, bless his heart, wasn't much for aesthetics." "He doesn't mind you renting it?" She hesitated a second. "He's not around anymore. Health issues. I took over the place to keep it afloat." Frank pulled out an envelope of fake cash and asked if she preferred off-platform bookings. She didn't even blink. "Oh, definitely. Saves the guests' fees. Just between us." I had her. Audio, video, her face, her voice, a stack of felonies, all served up under a patio umbrella she probably bought with my money. After the meeting, I watched Frank drive off and Karen return to the house. She didn't suspect a thing. That night, we compiled the footage. Alan nearly drooled when he saw it. "This is gold," he said. "Unauthorized property management, cash laundering, fraud, wire transfer violations. We could throw a RICO charge at her if we squinted hard enough." "Let's not overreach," I muttered. "I just want my damn house back." "Oh, you'll get it back," Alan said. "But first, we're going to burn down her little lakeside empire. Legally speaking. He sent the footage to a local journalist he knew who'd been sniffing around for a small-town scandal. I didn't want to go public yet, not until the courts had their bite, but Alan insisted a little public pressure would grease the wheels. By Sunday, things were moving fast. Airbnb froze Karen's account, Facebook removed her store, and I got a knock on my motel door from a woman who introduced herself as Allison, early 40s, anxious, holding a folder full of documents. "I think I was scammed by Karen, too," she said. "You're not the only one," I told her. She nodded. She took my uncle's house when he was in assisted living, told us she was managing it for him. We found out too late she'd sold half the furniture. I let her in. The war wasn't over, but now I knew. It was a war worth fighting. Karen always had this uncanny ability to turn herself into the victim no matter what fire she'd started. I remembered it from childhood. She once broke my nose with a snow shovel and then cried so hard that I got grounded for provoking her. Some people weaponize their tears. Karen, she weaponized charm and paperwork, so I wasn't surprised when she finally returned one of my voicemails, voice all syrupy and self-assured. "Joey," she said, like we were catching up over coffee and not in the middle of an escalating legal war. "I was gonna call you. I had no idea you were back. How are you? Still recovering? That's great. Listen, about the house." There was a pause, long enough to make me want to throttle the phone. "I only stepped in to help. The place was falling apart. You should thank me. Do you have any idea what mold does to lakefront properties?" I gritted my teeth. "You sold my grandfather's tackle box on Facebook Marketplace, Karen." Silence, then a sharp laugh. "Don't be dramatic, it was just clutter. You should be focusing on your health, not whatever little tantrum this is." That was the moment I stopped seeing her as family. Family doesn't steal your life and call it a service. The next day I called Frank and asked him to bring over the footage we'd recorded. Then I called Alan and told him it was time to go public. No more slow drip, no more quiet dignity. I wanted this blown wide open. We packaged everything: deed, booking records, eBay listings, Facebook storefront screenshots, and of course the sting operation footage, and sent it to a local reporter named Jenna Lowell, who ran a column called "Behind the Picket Fence." Don't let the soft name fool you. Jenna had teeth. She called me within an hour. "Jesus, Joe," she said, "this isn't a story, it's a goddamn mini-series." She interviewed me over coffee that afternoon. I told her everything: the heart attack, the rehab, the return, the betrayal. She asked smart questions and didn't flinch when I showed her the audio of Karen lying about my condition to Frank. "I want to run this," she said. "I'll change your name if you want, but frankly, the real thing might get more attention." "Use my name," I said, "and use hers." The article hit Monday morning. It started as a digital piece, then caught fire on social media, especially in the local lake community Facebook groups. Title: "While he was away, the man who came home to find his life rented out." By noon, the post had been shared over 6,000 times. By evening, I had 5 voicemails from people with similar stories, some involving Karen, others with their own conniving relatives or fake property managers. Seems like lakefront living attracts predators and opportunists in equal measure. Karen naturally lost her damn mind. She called me from a number I didn't recognize and launched into a tirade that could have blistered paint. "You're trying to destroy me," she shrieked. "Do you know how many people rely on me? Do you understand what this does to my brand? You've humiliated me publicly, over a house." I didn't say much, just let her rant until she ran out of breath. Then I said, "You did this to yourself," and hung up. Later that night, someone slashed the tires on Frank's car. Couldn't prove it was Karen or someone in her orbit, but let's just say the timing wasn't subtle. That same week, I got a call from Airbnb. After reviewing the documentation and media coverage, they'd permanently suspended Karen's account. Her bookings were canceled, her host profile deleted, and all funds frozen pending investigation. IRS followed. I got a call from an agent asking for more documentation on Karen's off-platform payments. I gladly obliged. Alan was already assembling a formal fraud case, but it was the neighbors that really sealed her fate. Until now, most of them had been either silent or passively neutral. Karen had always been helpful, organizing garbage pickups and posting lake safety reminders in the group chat. People liked her because she played the part of the responsible suburban matriarch. But after the article came out, the masks dropped. Turns out she wasn't so beloved. People started posting stories. Karen charging them for dock access she didn't own. Karen renting out paddleboards that mysteriously went missing. Karen scolding a neighbor's teenage daughter for hammocking too close to the shoreline. Within a week, the Lake Association formally distanced themselves from her. Jenna ran a follow-up titled "Not Her First Dockside Rodeo, a Pattern of Predatory Property Management." Karen went quiet after that. No calls, no texts. Her little lakefront empire was crumbling and she knew it. But I wasn't done yet. I had evidence. I had momentum. Next stop, court. I always knew Karen was bold, but I underestimated just how deep her delusions ran, until I was served court papers. Not by my lawyer, mind you, by hers. She was suing Timikiden. The papers claimed unauthorized entry and harassment, alleging that I had trespassed on private property and verbally intimidated paying guests. She included screenshots of me standing on my own porch circled in red like I was a prowler. She even attached a copy of a forged lease agreement between her fake LLC and a tenant, pretending I'd signed off as a silent co-owner. Alan nearly laughed himself into a hernia. She's suing you for showing up to your own home. She must think I'm dead again, I muttered. Good, he said. Let her press it. Gives us the perfect opportunity to launch our counterattack in court. So we filed a counterclaim: property fraud, unjust enrichment, theft of personal property, identity misrepresentation, and, Alan's favorite, willful defamation with intent to obstruct rightful ownership. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing for 2 weeks later. Until then, I stayed in that motel room counting down the days, watching as more of Karen's empire cracked under the weight of exposure. The day of the hearing, I showed up in a clean button-down, no tie, just to annoy her. She walked in late, flanked by a high-priced lawyer from out of town, and wore a blazer like she thought she was a real estate mogul giving a TED Talk. She didn't even look at me. The judge was an older woman with no patience for bullshit, which gave me hope. She began by reviewing Karen's claim, and immediately asked why the plaintiff was listing property ownership of a house she didn't legally possess. Karen's lawyer launched into some nonsense about constructive occupancy, arguing that she had acted as a de facto caretaker and therefore had standing. But Alan had already anticipated that. "Your Honor," he said, "my client was alive, recovering, and the sole title holder. Ms. Bishop entered the property under false pretenses, profited from it, and then took deliberate steps to erase his presence, including removing family heirlooms, falsifying rental agreements, and listing herself as owner online. We have digital and testimonial evidence." Then he played the video of the sting. The court watched Karen smiling wide, telling Frank the house had been in her family for years and that her cousin was out of the picture. She squirmed in her seat. Her lawyer asked for a recess, denied. Next came witnesses: Frank, cool and confident, explaining the cash deal; Travis, the gas station clerk, confirming the steady stream of guests; Allison, the woman whose uncle's house had suffered the same fate. Each story landed like a hammer. And then, the kicker. A representative from Airbnb appeared via video call and testified that Karen had received over $70,000 in bookings from the property, most of it during my hospitalization. She hadn't paid taxes, hadn't disclosed the income, and worse, she'd posted my name on the listing as a legacy host. The courtroom fell silent. Karen's mouth moved, but no sound came out. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Her lawyer tried to pivot, suggesting that perhaps I had initially agreed to the arrangement but forgotten due to medical trauma. Alan shut that down in 2 sentences and produced the hospital timeline, physician notes, and, just for fun, a get well card Karen had mailed me 3 months in. Signed, "Hope you recover soon, don't worry about the house, I've got it handled." It was over. The judge ruled in our favor on every count: unlawful occupation, misrepresentation, theft, and fraudulent profit. Karen was ordered to pay restitution, the full rental income, plus the damages for stolen property, and legal fees. She was also slapped with a court-ordered freeze on all business activity under her name pending further investigation. I didn't celebrate, not yet. Because in true Karen fashion, she made one last move, one final spiteful, pathetic attempt to maintain control. The night after the ruling, while I was staying in Alan's guest room, someone broke into the cabin. Nothing was stolen. No, it wasn't that kind of break-in. But the place was trashed. Drawers pulled open, my mattress slashed, walls defaced with paint. One word sprayed on the living room window in red: traitor. The cops came, took prints, found no signs of forced entry, which meant someone used a key. My original spare, the one I kept hidden under the garden gnome out front, had probably never left Karen's purse. She denied everything, of course, claimed it must have been one of those renters. But nobody believed her anymore. Not the cops, not the judge, not even her lawyer, who quit the next day. Alan turned to me that morning and said, "That woman's going to jail eventually." Eventually was good enough for me, because now, finally, I had my house back, and she had nowhere to hide. The first thing I did when I stepped back into my house, really stepped in, with no one squatting in the living room, no strange wine glasses on the counter, no humming dishwasher full of someone else's dishes, was sit on the floor and just listen. Not for voices or for intruders, but for the silence. It was like the place had been holding its breath for almost a year, waiting for me to come back. The damage from the break-in was ugly but fixable. The slashed mattress went straight into a dumpster. The spray paint came off with enough chemicals and swearing. But some things couldn't be undone. The stolen heirlooms, the memories erased from shelves and replaced with mass-market garbage. I started rebuilding. Not just physically, though there was plenty of that, but emotionally too. I put my grandfather's tackle box replica back on the mantel. Frank helped me track down a similar set of books to the ones Karen had sold. And one day, out of the blue, the guy from Massachusetts who bought my dad's chair messaged me. "Saw your story, this belongs to you." He drove it down himself. It was a slow restoration, a quiet one. Until the noise started again, not from my house, but from the people who'd been watching. The article Jenna wrote didn't just make local waves, it got picked up by a regional paper, then a national blog about property fraud. Suddenly my inbox was a flood of strangers, people with eerily similar stories. My cousin did the same thing while I was overseas. My neighbor's son forged a deed and sold her vacation home. I thought I was crazy, until I read about you. And then came the tip. A woman named Cheryl sent me a message, said she used to work in a title company 2 counties over. She'd processed a quitclaim deed 2 years ago with a familiar name. Karen Bishop. Claimed she was managing the estate of an elderly man, Arthur Lentz. Said he'd died. He hadn't. "Thought you should know," Cheryl wrote. Alan dug in. We found records. Karen had filed temporary guardianship over the man using the same trick: falsified medical affidavits, emergency stewardship. In his case, she hadn't rented the house. She'd sold it outright. Arthur was alive, confused, in assisted living but very much breathing. With that, the fraud case expanded. What started as a personal nightmare morphed into a county-wide investigation. The DA's office opened a formal probe into Karen's real estate activity. They subpoenaed her banking history. Dozens of PayPal transactions surfaced, all from properties she never owned. It wasn't just my lake house, it was a pattern, an empire of lies. And I had lit the match that brought it down. Airbnb cooperated fully. IRS launched an audit. Former tenants testified about double bookings, deposit thefts, and threatening messages when they complained. Karen tried to spin it again, claimed she was running a socially conscious short-term rental business to serve the underhoused and medically displaced. That lasted exactly one press release before someone dug up her Instagram, where she'd posted bikini selfies from my dock with the caption, "Another lake day, courtesy of generational wealth." The fallout was brutal. She was arrested for fraud, released on bond, then arrested again for contempt when she refused to hand over financial records. Her lawyer, the third one by now, quit mid-proceeding. The court froze her assets. Her business vanished. Her brand dissolved. She stopped posting, stopped calling, eventually stopped showing up. One morning, I was sitting on my deck drinking real coffee out of a chipped mug that had survived the purge when Frank came by waving a newspaper. "Guess who made the front page again?" he grinned. The headline read, "Caretaker or con artist? Lakefront scammer faces federal charges." There was a photo of Karen in handcuffs, eyes wide, mascara running. Below it, a quote from the prosecutor. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is deliberate, sustained exploitation of vulnerable property owners." I didn't smile, but I did feel something shift. Not just for me. For every poor bastard who'd ever trusted the wrong relative or come home to find their life tampered with like a hotel minibar. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was precedent. A few weeks after Karen's second arrest, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address, no signature, just a picture of a gray prefab townhouse with a tiny yard and plastic flamingos stabbed into the mulch. On the back, in blocky handwriting, it said, "Cho Rule number 14. Curtains must be white." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Word around the lake was that Karen had moved, well, been moved, into a strict suburban development outside Atlanta while awaiting her trial. Apparently, her bail conditions required residence at an approved address, and the only person dumb enough to co-sign for her was some distant aunt who lived in an HOA-zoned hellhole. You could smell the passive aggression through the envelope. Frank joked that karma had a homeowners association. As for me, life found its rhythm again. The house was fully mine once more, not just legally, but in soul. I repainted the porch swing, restocked the kitchen with mismatched mugs and good knives, even put up new photos, some old family ones, some of me and Frank laughing with a beer and one of my dad smiling beside the canoe we used to drag into the lake every spring. I didn't bother locking the canoe up anymore. No one touched it now. Neighbors started waving again. Some brought pies. One even offered to help with repairs, though he somehow always forgot his tools. The Airbnb guests stopped coming, of course, and the silence was glorious. No more white wine on the dock, no more yoga mats unrolling at dawn, just loons and the wind in the pine needles. But the real surprise came that fall. I'd been invited to speak at a local community safety seminar. Basically a glorified town hall where retired sheriffs talked about porch pirates and kids asked for free pepper spray. They gave me 10 minutes. I told my story, showed a couple slides, got some gasps, a few cheers, even a tear or two. And after it was over, this older guy came up to me, said he ran a small podcast about real estate scams and wanted to do a feature. That feature turned into a series. The series went viral. Suddenly, I was the lake house guy. I did interviews. I answered questions online. I helped a woman in Oregon expose her nephew for squatting in her vacation home. I advised a man in Florida who'd discovered his in-laws forged a deed to his trailer park lot. I didn't ask for this role, but I embraced it. Hell, someone had to. Karen's trial came and went. She took a plea, avoided prison by agreeing to pay back a large chunk of the money and permanently cease all real estate activity. She filed for bankruptcy a month later and disappeared from social media entirely. Nobody missed her. One day I got another letter, this time from Allison, the woman whose uncle's house Karen had stolen. She thanked me for exposing the scam, sent a photo of her uncle smiling in front of his recovered home, and added a note. "You didn't just win. You made it safer for the rest of us." That one, I framed. As for the lake, it healed. It always does. That spring I threw a party, nothing crazy. Just burgers, cold beer, and a hand-painted sign at the end of the dock that read, "No trespassing except for decent people." Frank brought fireworks. The neighbors brought folding chairs. Even Travis from the gas station showed up with his weird dog and a cooler full of Jell-O shots. As the sun dipped below the tree line, I stood with a plate of ribs in one hand and a plastic cup in the other, watching the water turn gold. I'd lost a year, sure, but I'd gotten something back too. My name, my space, my story, and this time no one was taking it from me.